Welcome to Swayam's MOOCs course on the course Public Financial Administration. Dear friends, today I am going to deal with the basics of public financial administration. And also in this lecture you will get to know about the nature, scope and significance of public finance. The aspects of financial administration, we need to look into few aspects and very important and relevant aspects. One is the fiscal policy and planning. The final authority for financial matters is that of the legislature, as we already know that legislature controls the finances both directly as well as indirectly with the help of committees. So, as Lord Beveridge had rightly quoted, I quote unquote, democracy need not fear bureaucracy if it knows its business. And the execution is usually done by the Ministry of Finance, integrated financial advisors, the controlling officers, the treasuries. The finances are deposited and distributed by finances and accounts maintained by the CAG. The control is done by the constitution, law, the political head or the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Finance and the administrative departments. So, we see that there is legislative control, there is judicial control and also executive control. And remember, the constitution is always upheld even in financial matters. One also should know that there should be a review, a research and advice as far as the finance is concerned. And that is why we use the word auditing, accounting, planning and research, so that there is review, research and advice. Now, we will talk about the ecology of financial administration. By understanding the ecology of the financial administration, we will also know what is necessary to be equipped to prepare for financial administration. Ecological factors play an important role for sustaining a system. So, if you take the ecological factors, first factor is the political factor. Of course, you know that economic, social and ethics are other ecology of financial administration. But when you take the political factors, it means the ideology of a political party in power. So, if they are more on a socialist pattern of administration, then governance will be more on socialist pattern. So, also the economy, where the distribution of wealth is one of the priority as far as governance is concerned. But if it is a capitalist form of government, then it is more on a business model, which eventually also helps a system. If you take for example, USA is a good example for a capitalist economy, where they pry on important resources which is generating and they outsource most of their resources so that they can save their resources. So, it can be either an ideology based on socialist pattern or an ideology based on capitalist pattern. A perception and attitude of the cabinet and the Prime Minister is also an important aspect as far as the ecology of financial administration is concerned, because it all depends on the motive of the cabinet and the Prime Minister. There should also have skill, perception and attitudes of finance minister. So, we see that there were great prime ministers who were also economists, which is a reflection of good governance also. And there is world political and economic environment which needs to be under consideration. We can see how currently we are progressing with a business model with foreign relations and foreign investments, which is helping our economy too. Now, if you take the economic aspect of the ecology of public financial administration, you see that the structure of the economy is also important. If you take India for example, we are largely dependent on agriculture. Unlike in Singapore, it is more on industries. And if you see in the Middle East, it is more on investments. But India is more agrarian. and agrarian system dwell on agriculture needs. So, the structure of an economy is sustainable, but it is slow. And also the external economic influences. Some, if you see, are just satellites of bigger economies. Like if you see, South America is highly dependent on the American system, which I could say, because they become just dumping yards of the American system of economy. And the present economic or the current economic situation is an important aspect. If you see, India did not go through the recession as much as US went through recession many years ago. It's because we were able to sustain our economy at a very slow pace and also very steady pace. And also it's important to understand the fiscal and the monetary policy. As far as the social system is concerned, social development, social justice and rural development is an important aspect as far as the ecology of financial administration is concerned. Now, you take the ethical aspect. There is something called a political integrity, and which is an important dimension as far as ethics is concerned. Then you have the bureaucratic integrity, that is the minister and the secretary relationship should be good enough and integral enough so that they think about the building of a nation. And the integrity of the financial administration as well as the managers and other institutions is important to be in a line with the objectives of a country. And the integrity of people, especially in paying taxes or registering your companies for the purpose of giving your payments promptly and in time. So, what is the objectives of financial administration? Financial administration has many objectives, but I have highlighted 8 important objectives of financial administration, which is management of the finances of public household, implementation of projects and programs, provision for food, goods and social services, provisions for public goods and social services, growth, employment and price stability, capital formation, productive deployment of national funds, facilitating smooth flow of parliamentary process, achieving equity and equality are the 8 important objectives of financial administration. And it is seen that you have management of finances of public household as an important aspect. Also, you see that public goods and social services is an important aspect, and how implementation of projects and programs becomes an important aspect. The growth in employment and price stability is an important aspect. Capital formation, production, important industrial development so that the national funds are retained, facilitating smooth flow of parliamentary process, achieving equity and equality. Now, if you see equity and equality, there is a great struggle of income inequalities and also gender bias. And if you take growth, employment, price stability, you see that hoarding of goods is happening. And also capital formation, there is no capital investments, and also productive deployment of funds. Stabilizing our public enterprises is a very common and very difficult situation, which is quite challenging. And that is why we need to reiterate these objectives of financial administration to understand that if we reach our targets, if we need smooth functioning of a system, then we need to strengthen our financial administration, and it should be an integral part of any system or organization, so that if the finance is good, the administration is good and the organization benefits. So, what are the 8 principles of financial administration? The first principle is the principle of primacy of public interest, public choice and public policy. The second principle is the principle of political direction and control. Third principle is the principle of correspondence. The fourth principle is the principle of unity of organization and management. The fifth principle is the principle of stability and balance. The sixth principle is the principle of simplicity and flexibility. The seventh principle is the principle of conduct, discipline and regularity. The eighth principle is the principle of public trust and accountability. If you see, all this eight principle is pertaining to the benefits of the citizens. And if we see that we cannot identify finance is different and administration is different, and citizens are not different from or not an integral part of finance. So, if you have a good administrative system, then you need to have a good financial system, and also the citizens should play an important role so that it will culminate to a very responsible and a very developing country. So, we will deal with now the importance of public financial administration. As we all know and we discussed in detail that public finance is the lifeblood of every agency. It improves the socio-economic development of a country. It also helps achieving national objectives of the government, and not only for the government but also for the nation in general. It will help achieve the goals of the people. If the country achieves its goals, then naturally the citizens will be benefited. It ensures that public funds are managed well so that wastage and abuses are avoided. It also helps in raising revenue from domestic and international level. It also helps in strengthening our Human Development Index. It also helps in the implementation of various governments, various development programs, and provide public services. So, if you know that we spoke about fiscal policy and monetary policy, but we will just highlight a few points on fiscal policy, which is very important because we spoke about equality and equity. So, if in order to reduce inequalities of income, we need to have a strong fiscal policy, equitable distribution of wealth among different sections of the society, employment generation. There should be a price stability. Now, if you see suddenly the rates of onions or tomatoes go high, or the gold rates go jumping high, that causes instability to the system. In a developed country, you will see there is more or less the same prices if you go 5 years back or 10 years down the lane. But if there is a fluctuating economy, then it causes a big mistrust in the governance. So, the price stability is an important aspect as far as administration is concerned. And there should be some amount of inflation, but having too much beyond 2.5% of inflation is always a worry. So, inflation control is an important aspect as far as the fiscal policy is concerned. Of course, as now India is emerging as one of the developing countries, we should also remember that we are also encouraging foreign direct investments with lot of controls and also reducing the license raj, which has helped in more investments in our country, which could possibly help in more employment. Now, we will deal with the new emerging trends, some of the trends which has seen the benefits of having a strong fiscal policy, a strong budgeting system. One is the regulation and control of fiscal deficit. There is also a cutback on non-development expenditure. There is also development of zero-based perspective. There is also application of contingency approach. They have de-emphasized public sectors. There is disinvestments in public sectors. There is non-bureaucratic delivery of public goods and services. There is focus on decentralized responsibility for financing development plans. There is also movement towards deregulation and liberalization policy, which is also moving way for more of private investment, public-private partnerships like the airports, like the passport office. And also it is also generating funds and also providing employment, and also privatization will help in bringing profits as well as more scientific and systematic approach. So, if you take some of the basic characteristics of the Indian economy, as we have dealt with the nature, scope, importance and principles of public financial administration, we will now look into the characteristics of the Indian economy as a developing economy. I am dealing with this characteristic so that it becomes a basis of your study for public financial administration, and you will be able to relate and also connect most of the principles which you are studying, and also most of the lectures will be dealing with taxations and fiscal and monetary policy can have more association with the Indian economy, which is a developing economy. The first point is the low per capita income. What do you mean by this low per capita income? If you see the developing economies are marked by existence of low per capita income. So, developing economies are marked by the existence of low per capita income. If you see in 2014, the per capita income of India was $1,570, which is quite slow and but yet steady, but it could be better than this. So, this low per capita income has affected the Indian system largely. Now, if you take the second characteristic, it is an occupational pattern, primary producing pattern. What is this primary production? If you see that India is basically an agrarian country, and so it is having a very fluctuating and as well as a seasonal pattern, and so it has its impact on finances. One of the basic characteristics of the underdeveloped economy, and it is seen that most of these countries which are underdeveloped or developing have agriculture as its primary produce. So, in India, if you take in 2014, about 47% of the working population was agriculture, and it also was realized that agriculture will not be recorded, or there is no estimation for it, or it is nothing where it can be following a system. No scientific technology has been used, and that has been a big question as far as the Indian economy for agriculture is concerned. And so many scientific researches has been going through, so many recommendations are working on it, so that we can also sustain agriculture, but also have industrial policies which are strong. We should become more a manufacturing country rather than just a service industry. We see that we are not manufacturing products which can stabilize our economy 100-folds, I would say. And if you see, the national income was just 17% according to the data published by the World Bank, because no resources can be taken as a final resources, and you see there is a fluctuating economy as far as an agrarian system is concerned. The third characteristic is heavy population pressure. The main problem in India is the high level of birth rates, and there is high level of birth rates and the falling of the death rates. So, the rate of growth of population, which was 1.3% in 1991 to 2001, it jumped to 1.93. Right now, if you see, currently it has again reduced to 1.6%. So, with the heavy population, it has become a big challenge, and it is good that the falling of the death rate, but at the same time people should be conscious that the population pressure will have an impact on our economy. There is also the prevalence of chronic unemployment and underdevelopment. In India, labor is abundant factor, and consequently it is very difficult to provide gainful employment to the entire working population. If you see, currently we are one of the youngest population all over the world. But do we have the employment to meet the challenge? Although it's a productive population, we don't have sufficient system to provide employment. And so we are now introducing entrepreneurship skills and also business management programs in order to encourage the working population. In developed countries, unemployment is of cyclic nature and occurs due to the lack of effective demand. But in India, it is unlikely like that. It is always in demand. There is also a steadily improving rate of capital formation. We saw one of the challenges and trends is the capital formation. During the 50s and 60s of the 20th century, basic characteristics of the Indian economy was the existence of capital deficiency, which is reflected in two ways. Firstly, the amount of capital per head available was low, and secondly, the rate of capital formation was also low. So, capital formation is a cause of concern. The second, one of the important characteristic is maldistribution of wealth or assets. According to the RBI survey of assets of rural and urban households for the period July 1991 to June 1992 brings out the existence of sharp inequalities in asset distribution, and there is complete inequality which is calling for redistribution of wealth. There is also a characteristic which is poor quality of human capital. A glaring feature of an underdeveloped economy is the poor quality of human capital. The quality can be emphasized with better literacy programs, quality education and also skill development. There is also prevalence of low level of technology. It will definitely make you laugh to think that there is poor level of technology when there is so much of knowledge available. Although we have knowledge, we don't have the investments or the capital to encourage the level of technology so that it becomes challenging to other companies and other countries. In a developing economy like India, the most modern techniques exist side by side with the most primitive in the same industry. But there is no gainsaying that the fact that the majority of the productive units and a major part of the output is produced with the help of techniques which can be described as inferior, judged by modern specific standards. And it is important that we need to upgrade our technology. We need to invest so that we can get our returns very good. But a good example would be South Korea, which also got its independence more or less the same time when we got independence. And with its soft powers, it was able to turn the economy drastically and to a greater levels. So, with more quality and more skill, which is very important as far as India is concerned. There is low level of living of the average Indian. Failure to secure a balanced diet manifests in India in the low calorie intake and low level of consumption of protein. So, there is lot of malnutrition. In 1999, the average calorie intake of food is only 2496, that is 2496 calories as compared to the 3400 calories per day in most of the developed countries. When you take the Tendulkar report, you realize that nearly 26% of the people are below poverty line, and malnutrition is at a rise. When people are given money to buy food, are investing on technology and also not being skilled with technology, but investing on pleasure or leisure is a cause of concern. There is also the characteristic of a demographic characteristics of an underdeveloped country. Among the demographic characteristics associated with underdevelopment are high density of population. We already discussed that population is a concern, but also there is an expectancy level. The low expectancy, life expectancy and infant mortality rates are high. The density of population in India in 2006 was 373 per square kilometer as compared with the average density of population in the world, which is just 50 per square kilometer in 2005, and that is really a worry. Finally, one characteristic which can draw everyone's attention is the socio-economic indicators of consumption, which are a characteristic of an underdeveloped economy in India. We should see that the intake of calories, fats, proteins, carbs and also nutrition is as an important aspect, and that is where the midday meal scheme and also the effective schemes which has been introduced, so that the government wants to ensure that people are healthy and also bring in a healthy progeny. So, if you see, I can summarize by saying that establishment of goals towards financial management will help in a better system. Establishment of an organizational framework which is relevant information of available courses of investment will also help in a good financial system, and designing an operational criteria for assessing the accomplishment of organization goal is also an important objective as far as financial administration is concerned, and optimizing the resources and also helping the resources being optimally used, or you can say selection of an optimum mix of financial resources available to an enterprise can help financial administration. So, I would conclude by saying that financial administration, be it a socialist pattern or a capitalist pattern, it should encourage to reach the national goals. Ultimately, we should remember the key word that finance is the lifeblood of a social system, of a society. So, be it a social system which is pertaining to socialist pattern of finance or a capitalist pattern of finance, it should help the society endeavor to greater heights so that it could contribute to national building. We also see that how the nature of financial administration, the principles, the scopes and importance of financial administration should contribute to the development of a country. And I hope India will progress with good financial administrative system. Thank you. I have a question. What is finance? Finance is the lifeblood of a society. The second question is, what is an instrument of economic policy? Answer is, budgeting is an instrument of economic policy. I have a question. What is the expansion of HDI? HDI is Human Development Index. Who wrote the Arthashastra? The answer is Kautilya or Chanakya. Thank you.